I wanted to thank the Nuyorican Poets Cafe for helping to give me a life in the arts. Because without that institution, which includes Miguel Algarin, Lois Griffiths, Carmen, Carmen, Pedro Pietre, all right, Julio, who, if you ever been to the cafe back in the day, Julio was the man standing at the door just causing all. He's probably the most gifted editor of, he probably knows more poetry than anybody, and he doesn't even write. But the guy standing at the door collecting the money and keeping everybody, on the QT, he saw and heard more poetry. And if you pull Julio off to the side and ask him about somebody's poem, he will critique it in the most matter of factly way because he just heard so much stuff all the time, and it just seeped into it. He was the one person somebody could get up on stage, start reading the poem 30 seconds in, and Julio be like, "No, he got to go." he
Oh,
got
man.
to he got to go.
Wow.
So just in respect to those guys in this institution, I want to do a series of talks to thank them, just to thank them. Again, because without that institution, there's no way I would have a life in the arts today. And it's extended quite a number of years. So, what I'd like to do is talk about Miguel Mikey Pinero, who died 2 years before I ever showed up at the cafe. So this is not someone I met or ever knew or ever physically saw. But in 1983, in it was Professor Ruth Dixon at San Diego City College had a course that was titled Black Poets of the Black Arts Movement, right? And I only took her class because I was playing intercollegiate tennis, college tennis. And I just figured poetry class would be an easy 3 units. And it would, I wouldn't have to really. And she blew my mind because when I went into the classroom, she said, the assignment here, I won't even paraphrase. The assignment: find a poem by a poet whose birthright background differs from yours. Learn the poem by heart, then come to class prepared to say the poem and have the poem critically analyzed. She said, learn the poem by heart. Now, that's a term I knew because I'm from a family that's about culture and art and everything. So I understand what that means. And music, my people are musical. And so when she said it, I knew what she meant. But what a gift. All right. So now I'm like, whoa. I head to the library. I locate section 811.54, shells from the floor, far left. Soup, Nuyorican Poetry Anthology, Algarin Pinero, 1975. Now, this is 1983 when I'm taking this class. What attracted me was the cover of the book, the black and white picture of them on the book, which was a bombed out brownstone in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which I didn't know the building per se, but I knew the neighborhood because I used to go there and buy drugs back in the day when I was into that type of thing. So I knew that, and so I was attracted to the picture on the book. Like, whoa, really? I know that neighborhood. I'm browsing through the index, and boom, what do I see? La Metadona Esta Cabrona. Now I'm in sunny San Diego. Don't nobody know what that is. They don't understand. Like, even if I spoke to my Mexicano friends, they wouldn't understand that particular slang. They wouldn't understand that use of language. La Metadona Esta Cabrona ain't no snitch, methanone's a bitch. I found my poem for the class. Now comes the hard struggle of trying to learn it by heart. And I found out then, if you don't love something, it's almost impossible to learn it by heart. So that would be lesson number one for this workshop.
Right.
If you're a musician and you want to play saxophone and you don't learn any John Coltrane songs by heart, you're gonna have a hole in your bucket leaking. All right, so it's one of the easiest ways to find your voice, plain and simple. It's the easy way to find your voice. So I'm going to say the poem, right? Then we can kind of go over it, critically analyze it. Then I like to know from anyone who's courageous enough to tell me something that they love and maybe do or not necessarily have to know by heart, but something you know, a piece of art you know that has helped you find your voice. All right, so here we go. Constipated, mind castrated, feeling frustrated, being invaded by pain. Another date. El doctor is late, bones ache. Got to go downtown, underground, no metadona around. Me siento solo y loco, socorro. La metadona esta cabrona ain't no snitch, methadone's a bitch. But then there's always the wine when waiting online for the holy rolling water that ease your mind. Brush aside all concept of time. Lo cojo con, take it easy. Hey, my main man, you know the program. They don't care. They'll put you on welfare and feed you that bitter orange drink you swallow from that little plastic bottle. And come aboard La Metadona train. It's so boss, better than horse con cocaine. Full of synthetic need, legalized OD. Can't you see? La Metadona Esta Cabrona ain't no snitch. Methadone's a bitch. What's the difference? 6 days a week, you not out on the stoop. The seventh, you not out on your therapy group. They calls you a slob because you not out on the job and your wood won't throb. It just flops, flops, flops. Can't yell out ghetto side, but you did abide and sign on a dotted line to an agreement of shame. Who's to blame but you motherfucking lame? Oye, Leo, te buscate, mi pana. Tú no sabes que la metadona está cabrón. Out on the street, you claim to be a revolutionary who appear on color TV. If you get, you signal a telephone jingle and social entry. You wasn't cool, fool. Porque yo te vi on TV as you style and smile, offering apologization for the nation's program of computerization, general sedation, and next mention with no hesitation, a manifestation, a dead man's declaration that you was no longer on drugs, but on medication. And now, when I read the poem from the anthology in 1983, the anthology was published in 75. I don't know when he wrote it. There were no notes or anything that said the year he wrote it or blah blah blah. But I know, fast forward to 2020 or 2000 or 1996, the golden years of hip hop, every famous MC on the planet would love to be able to have a rhyme scheme like constipated, mind castrated, feeling frustrated, being invaded by pain. They would love that. So I don't know when he wrote it, all right, but I'm sure he wrote it before things blew up in the Bronx for hip hop. I'm almost positive. All right. Now, so it's not that it's new. We did have the last poets that preceded Mikey. We had the Watts prophets that preceded Mikey. We had Gil Scott Heron right around the same time. You had James Brown's King Heroin, which was basically a rap song a few years before that. There were a lot of things happening. You had Cooley High, and you had the lead character in the movie Cooley High was reading poetry from a Russian cat. I forget the guy's name off, but all the poems that the cat preach, read in Cooley High, which is around the same time. It came, I forget this guy. This Is My Beloved was the title of the book, but I think it was a Russian poet. But I don't know again when Mikey wrote this poem, but the rhyme scheme, the musicality, the imagery of the streets and the Lower East Side, he's got subject matter that could not possibly be popular with the elbow patch poetry world that still rules the world, but not as much as it did then. So for him to break through, and I was going through culture shock because I was in San Diego going to college and I was missing New York. And the minute I was missing New Jersey and Jersey City, and the minute I read that poem, it changed my whole life around about writing and literature. And again, I only took the class because I was playing intercollegiate college tennis. And I was trying to get the quickest, easiest 12 units that I had to carry to be on the team. And I was trying to just make my way through it. And I wound up loving this class and poetry. And again, Walter Benton, thank you. Michael just jumped in. Walter Benton, This Is My Beloved. All right. That's the poetry that Preach used in the movie Cooley High. And it's also an album that my pops had in the house that was the poetry was recited by Arthur Prysock. And it was a verb record. And so in my house, even at that time, I'm listening to this spoken word Arthur Prysock, a famous jazz singer. But he had a record where he did the whole, not the whole book, but he probably took about 12 poems from the book. So again, yes, Benton. He says Michael had that record too. Michael, I'm sorry, I don't chat. I don't hit the chat when I'm doing workshops because it's kind of like distracting to me. I don't multitask like that. So, anyone, should I do it again? Does anyone got any comments on what I said here? And I'll just do the top of the poem again. Mm-hmm. So, what is a person's mind state? What is the imagery that's driving them? What's the efficiency of the language? All right. What's the musicality that would cause a person to say constipated? Now, who in the world starts a poem off with constipated, mind castrated, feeling frustrated, being invaded by pain? Another date, El Doctor is late, bones ache, got to go downtown, underground, no Metadona around. Me siento solo y loco socorro, la Metadona Esta Cabrona ain't no snitch, methadone's a bitch. Talk about, and I'm a person who loves contradictions and antithesis. Talk about antithesis and contradiction. Just so layered and stuff, and just the first pass of the poem. Like I don't call them passes, I call them. People say verses, I call pass because it's kind of like how much words you can get out in the breath or your heart beating and things like that. But any comments, any ideas about that? The theme, the subject matter, the musicality, the efficiency, the imagery that's coming at you. Jump in. It's like double dutch. Jump in, jump out.
I mean, I guess I'll go first. If you
Oh,
want
you
to,
know
like,
what? Hold up a second. Listen, everyone who can hear me, I've been doing a lot of these things online since the pandemic, and one thing I've learned is that, and I'm a very, what's the word? I have etiquette as a human being. I was raised correctly, but in these situations, you have to learn and trust your timing. You got to take into account bad Wi-Fi, buffering. All right, you got to take all that into account, and so it's not really not. It's not a situation of you not having manners. If someone establishes a rhythm of the session or the lecture or the classroom, there's a rhythm that's established. You don't have to raise hands. You don't have to. You know how like when you speak, it takes a moment for your face to pop up. So we all need to learn when you do, because we're going to be doing this forever now. This is not going away. Whether the pandemic goes, this is not going away. So I would suggest that everybody understand your internal rhythms so that you can jump in and out of the screen like you jump in double dutch. That means you also have to listen and think fast because if someone's speaking, say someone's reading a poem. All of us are poets or writers. We've been to readings, we hear, we read. You know when someone's coming to the end. You know when someone's coming to the end. So don't be afraid to jump in when they're over. It's double dutch. And if you jump in and they're not finished, they wrote a booty poem.
uh,
If you jump in and because how often have all of us been to readings or even read out of a book and we go like, wait, hey, they should have stopped right there.
Right.
Now, has anyone not had that sensation? Hey, that poem was over, and it could be on the page or on the stage. Hey, hey, because sometimes you're ready to clap, and you go, oh, snap.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dimitri.
yeah. So what I was gonna say is just opening up with constipated. And actually, when I thought of constipated, I actually thought of one of the Fugees lyrics. I'm forgetting what song it was, but Wyclef says, "Now I take iron, makes my shit constipated."
Yeah.
It's just it's really great in a poem where you can just start with a word that's going to make your audience listen, right? So if you start a poem with a word such as constipated, already it's kind of like you're speaking in an in jam. People are going to want to go to that next line, or they're going to be waiting or listening to that next line to kind of try to receive what that person's going to say next. So starting a line with constipated, especially if we're talking about like the beats or the like the Nuyorican folks where they were orators, they read for audiences. Like it really makes people stop by and listen, you know. And then by the time we get through that first section, you see that constipated, you know, it could actually be a malady from taking meth or something, from instance, right? Thinking of constipated, you think of crowds. So crowds in the city, you know, you have that anxiety of trying to get that next fix. So it's like a compounded idea of that one word. But because such a weird word starts the poem, it's able to add complexity and kind of compound itself through the rest of the work, you know?
I think that is a perfect metaphor for what's happening on stages today. I don't mean today because of the pandemic, but what's been going on for the last 20 years, and how people here, all of us, how do you feel when your name is called and you step to the stage? What's going on in your gut? All right.
Ooh, yeah.
What is the anxiety, the nerve? So when I read it now, the first thing I think is my stomach it starts doing this sidewalk act when I'm called up. And I've been doing this, like most of you have been doing this a long time. And you're like, why am I feeling like this? So obviously it has to be part of the process. It's
Mhm.
probably something you never, and I've heard actors, jazz musicians, famous politicians all say, Michael Jordan, oh, if I ain't feeling nervous before the game's on, something's wrong. If I'm not feeling some
Right.
anxiety and so when I read that just now, and I've been reading it and studying it forever, but when I read it just now, I just thought to myself, whoa, I don't feel constipated, but my gut is working overtime whenever I'm called to, ladies and gentlemen, blah blah blah. Welcome to the stage, Dimitri Reyes. Welcome to the stage, Karen. It's like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And here, going back to what you said, Dimitri, the most popular and probably the most money making, without a doubt, the most money making musical in the last 10 years has been Hamilton.
Mhm.
The first line in the first song, I can't remember. And I know a lot about musical theater. I cannot remember the first few words in a musical. And here, how does the son of a bastard? He says bastard in the
Mhm.
first three, 4 words are gone. How does the orphan son of a bat? I'm like, whoa. And yet, I've been into schools with kids groups, drama clubs, they do performances of the opening number of Hamilton, and every school I've ever been in and heard it, they bleep the bastard.
Mm.
They bleep it, or they try to replace the word with something. So going back to what you said, Dimitri, it pulls you, it makes you lean forward in your seat. So constipated, man, and I remember when I first read it, I was like, whoa, because I was involved in recreational drugs at the time, and I was like, oh, it was
Yeah.
visceral. It was
Yeah.
totally
It's a
visceral.
it's a big
And
word too. You know, it makes you
oh,
look at it like a
yeah, it makes you deal
multi-syllabic
with it,
word.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
It makes you deal with it right off the bat. Constipated, and then mind castrated. Because the minute I hear castrated, being a black male who's over the age of 50, I'm thinking about the Klan. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Mississippi. All
Right.
right. So I've never really, so the image that I get from that word is totally corrupted when he says mind castrated. I'm like, whoa. That's the heaviest thing for me in the whole poem, to be honest. Mind castrated. I'm loving it. Anybody else want to jump in? Double Dutch.
What I liked was that, the opening, all the words he used are they're sort of very static. They're very sluggish. And then he shifts to the going downtown on the underground. So then, you've got all this movement. Suddenly something's happening. He's got to go someplace. I like the contrast between those two
So it's
things.
boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom,
Boom. Yeah.
boom. Then the movement. Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da, da,
Yeah.
da, da.
Yeah.
I get it. Boom, boom. These are all solitary, concrete experiences.
Yeah.
All right. They're almost like a punch.
Yeah.
They're like boom, next one, boom, next one, boom, next one, boom. Then it's running. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Say hello, everybody. Glad that you're all here. Hope everybody's family is healthy and happy.
Mhm.
We are.
as you can see, I'm happy. You know, I am so happy. I'm so happy. I'm breathing. You have no idea. And not that I got any physical problems. I'm just like, I cannot believe the foolishness that has gotten us to this point. All right. And I never knew. Dimitri, let me ask you this. Did you realize how much you would miss being on a stage?
It took me actually. What was funny was I went to Texas for AWP in March. By the time I
Uh-huh.
came back, Jersey shut
Everything.
down.
It
Yeah.
was shut
So
down.
I got one last reading at like some kind of cantina before I came back, and that helped me into maybe like May. By May, I was like, "Yo, it's so different to do this online than it is on stage," and you miss that interaction with people, you
What's
know,
the interaction, right?
because you
Really?
have yeah, like I mean, I would say like there's an intimacy in being like in a little square with like a bunch of people. Like I
Uh,
feel like, we're in each other's rooms. It feels like a
Mhm.
salon, but yeah, there's something about being in front of like audiences in the community, especially like in work and stuff that I miss. I
Well,
hope
I
that was
missed
your
the.
question
Oh,
because my
oh
thing
no, that's
froze.
good. I missed the five. I missed the
Okay.
five senses.
Yeah.
That's what I miss
Yes, yes.
because I can gauge so many things. Here, how often have you walked into a space and you take a swig, you go like, whoa, what's going like,
Mhm.
oh, they're drinking scotch in here, or somebody's hitting that indigo, or like, or they got the perfume on, and all of that kind of helps to it tells you who's there, who's
Word,
in the
yeah.
room, who's in the space. Like this happens everywhere we go. Like I remember going to the theater with my grandmother when I was a little kid, and I used to get nauseous from the cheap perfume I would hear because we were sitting in the good seats, and all the women down front, they was like having this. It might not have been cheap, but it was making me nauseous. And so I was like dreading, like Marcelo. Okay, Reg, we're gonna go see this The Wiz. We're gonna. I don't want to go. I don't want to. I may throw up. Like, but I miss that. I miss the act, the scent, the smell, the taste, the sound. I mean, the applause,
Was.
people mumbling, people
Mhm.
calling response, yelling back at you, and all of that is theater.
Yeah.
Mm.
So online, so this workshop is really about the connection between poetry and theater. And the reason I picked Pinero, not only because I love his writing and his poetry, but here's somebody who won an Obie Award for a play, which then was turned into a movie, a very popular movie. And so this is a guy who, and I'm sure, I know he didn't learn this in an MFA program. I know he didn't have a PhD in poetry or theater or a MFA writing credits, but dude, his keen sense of awareness, all right, allowed him to see what was going on in his world and turned it into pictures and images, all right? But it doesn't seem subscribed. Well, it doesn't seem prescribed. It doesn't seem
Mhm.
scripted. And I
Mhm.
remember reading his stuff on the page. I'm looking at it on a piece of paper, and it still doesn't seem to me like it's scripted. I'm reading it, and it doesn't seem like it's scripted.
Mhm.
All right. So here's one of these people, one of these poets, who, if I didn't hear, and I've never heard anyone read it. One guy, I've heard one person read it or say it aloud, all right, on a video. But I've never heard his voice. I've searched everywhere. I begged Miguel Alganin, Miguel, you got to find me a copy of La Metadona. And Miguel, so I've never heard him say it. I've heard Mikey do
Mhm.
other stuff. And I could see the theater in him, the drama, his ability to take it. And the key with him and all poets who change their poetry into theater in the moment is that most poets that can do that, their poems tell them how they should feel every step of the way. This is how I feel. This line, I know when I say this line, I should feel this way. And so then the great ones are able to make me as an audience member feel the same way they feel in the moment. Like, I don't want to know how you feel. I want you to make me feel how you feel in the moment. And that's the connection that I make between poetry and theater. Anyone, jump in, double touch.
I only really know him from Short Eyes, which, when I saw that, man, it was like just getting 2x4 to the side of the head, man.
It was
just like
insane.
that's one of those movies. It's like people like, I want something intense like this. Yeah.
And what about the use of language, Michael?
Yeah.
What about that? Like, I remember I read it before I saw it, right? And I was like sitting there like, whoa, how dope is this? That somebody could write this down, right, on a piece of paper, and then somebody would publish it. Somebody would put it in a book. I'm like, that's probably my introduction to like profanity on the page in such a huge, huge like mounds of it, but also theme and subject matter.
Yeah.
I had never read anything about pedophilia. And I mean, and the whole move, the whole play is about that. I mean, the title, Short Eyes, right? So it was a revelation to me. And when I read it, I wasn't into no poetry, and then I was hanging out. But somebody slid it to me like, you should check this out, bro. All right, because if you don't stop, hey, somebody gave me the book because they said you need to check this out, bro. Because if you don't stop doing what you're doing, you're gonna wind up in this book. That's what the person who gave me the book said. You're gonna wind up in this book if you don't stop what you're doing. And it was almost like it could have saved my life.
Yeah.
So I'm also connected to that, but I was like flabbergasted when I saw the movie. Because I never thought that they could make. I read The Godfather before I saw the movie, like almost everybody. I didn't think they were gonna be able to pull that off. Michael, yeah, you read The Godfather, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, not just anybody could have pulled it off like that, though. I mean, you're talking about a great artist, but
Yeah.
That's one of the very few times you actually have a movie that's better than the book.
But you were shocked, but you were surprised, though, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, who was ready for that?
Because my father made me read that book. My father was a police officer. He made me read that book, and I'm like, man, I don't read this, man. He said, you need to read it, right? And so my father taught me that every human being could be a great reader. We cannot all be great writers or poets or screenplays or directors or choreographers. He said there's not a human being on the face of the earth, as long as their cerebral cortex is working properly, we all have the ability to be a great reader.
That's great.
And that's the greatest gift he ever gave me. He said you could do, like my father used to have Playboy magazines underneath the bed, right? And you're a little kid, like, hey, what do you think that is? And I'm looking at him one day, and he comes in to the house, kind of catches me. He goes to his little box and pulls one out, and he makes me read an article that was in the Playboy, an interview that Alex Haley did with Malcolm X.
Oh yeah.
It shattered my whole conception of what this magazine was. Like I'm looking like, see the naked women or in the bikinis or the swimsuits, and he gives me the magazine. He said, "Read this." Like it was punishment. Read this, but it was a revelation. And I was like, "Whoa, who is this Malcolm X cat? Like, who is this dude? Like, and how did this get in that magazine with the naked women and the swimsuits and everything?" I never even thought about Playboy magazine after that. And this was in May 1963. I'm a little tiny kid, and I never even thought about Playboy magazine after that. And if I did grab one, I'm looking to see what the interview is. If there's something in it other than whatever attracts most men to get it. So the lessons we learn. Anybody else jumping in?
My introduction to Pinero was The Sun Always Shines for the Cool. And I love your Playboy. Hey, brother.
What's up? How are you? I'm just seeing your name now. I'm like, wow, how you doing?
Yeah, the face and the name gives it better. I have a lot going on in the background, so I was sparing you guys, but I think I'm safe for the moment. If the camera goes back, it's because people it's running in and you don't need to do it.
It's online.
But I love the Playboy comparison, because to me that's so much of and also when you're talking about the people in the jackets, the proper poets, so to speak, because
elbow patch.
Yeah, thank you. I lost the word. But that's why Pinero is so powerful, and that's why the educators don't want to touch him, is because he is all of those things, and he is ugly, and it's not simple. You know, how can a person who writes this beauty also, you know, sync with such ugliness? And it's very complicated and real, and not an easy thing to just put on a syllabus and dismiss. And you have to delve into it and get into it and talk about very challenging stuff to address any of his plays. And for some people it's too scary, but it's interesting too that we're talking about this during a pandemic and a complicated election and all of that, because he's so emblematic of what we've avoided in our country for too long. Not all of us, but you know what I'm saying, in terms of mainstream.
Of course. Yeah.
To address what the problem is, and Pinero's addressing what the problem is, and the elites don't want to have that conversation.
I was listening to a lecture this afternoon, professor at Harvard who teaches Shakespeare. And she was talking, they were doing a whole, lecture on Othello, right? And so she was asking these people about Iago's character traits, who he was, why did he do these things, what he was motivated. And the more I listened to her, it never dawned on me before, but the more I listened to her, the more I realized that Iago is almost a perfect personification of Donald Trump. I just never thought of it before, because I never really thought about it, because if you know Othello, people say jealousy is the driving thing, right? Donald Trump is like that, I would imagine. But I never thought about it like this. How could this guy who got everything how could he be jealous of other people and his actions, or I should be in his position? And listening to her today, I was like devastated, because I should have thought of that myself. And I could have written something and kind of made the connection between the two of them, which would have then been very questionable to anybody who read or heard whatever I wrote. It's like, nah, Iago was about something else. Iago was never in a position. He was middle class, or he was like white trash, or whatever he was. He wasn't royalty. Well, neither is he. He just thinks he's royalty. All right, double Dutch. I'm ready for y'all.
But I just wanted to build on one point that you just said, and also the fear. Do you know what I mean? Like you would think a person born into the position of a Donald Trump has so little to fear, and he is so fear-based. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah.
So that's the theme for today then, as writers and exercises, fear, right? The theme would be fear when we leave and go about our business and try to create the next thing, right? Because I feel the same way. Yeah. So when listening to this woman lecture today, it struck me that Cassio, who was Florentine, and like Machiavelli and Medici and whoever else, like they were privileged, right? So the dude who was privileged in the whole play, all right, probably the nicest person, which to kind of talk about antithesis, talk about contradictions. So the nicest guy, the person with the most redeeming quality in the entire play for me was Cassio. But he was also a sucker.
Yeah.
But you don't expect people that have intelligence to be suckers. But he was a sucker, right? And so all of this is like, and the reason I even bring that up is because I am so fascinated with anyone who wants to make their poetry theatrical. And I got that mindset when I met Miguel Algarin, all right, who, for all intents and purposes, without him, I would not have a place. I would not have had a place in the arts, a life in the arts, because by him keeping that institution open, allowed me to walk through the door. And all of us, so many of us, walk through that door and express ourselves, not concerned about somebody judging us. And I'm not talking about slam. That's a whole different thing. All right. But Miguel used to always talk about, and even in the forward, the forward and aloud, Voices from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, Miguel uses the term, the theatricalization of poetic expression. And he used to always talk to all of us about that. I don't know who else was listening, but I was listening closely. Then Miguel used to he did so much for so many of us, Paul Beatty, Maggie Estep, Dana Bryant, Willie Perdomo, Dale Orlando Smith. He hooked us up, right? Like he hooked us up to such a degree, getting us residencies, taking us on trips, we make money with him, hanging out with him. But then, dude, every February, every Black History Month, because he used to teach ethnic literature in the U.S. and Shakespeare at Rutgers in New Brunswick. So every February, Black History Month, he would make us go into his classrooms and teach for free, right? And so he calls me up one day, says, Reg, you're teaching this month. Everybody else is traveling. You're teaching in my class this whole month. All right, that's cool. I could do creative writing and blah, blah, blah. He said, you're going to teach my Shakespeare class. What are you talking? Miguel, come on, man. What are you talking about? He said, brush up on your Shakespeare. I'm picking you up tomorrow morning. Boom. Right? What the hell? Not, I'm like all the rest of y'all. We've been force-fed Shakespeare at least since you're in high school. Some of us even before that, elementary school, they trying to pump it into us. The relevancy, the writing skills. I'm like, what? He puts me in a lecture room, 72 students, right? I don't know jack shit about not enough to be talking to 72 people about it. And the only thing that saved my ass is that I knew some of the monologues and some of the soliloquies and some of the couplets and everything because of my grandmother. My grandmother used to make me kind of like learn these things and say it to her and her little friends in her sitting room. Yeah, my grandmother was from the bougie boogerhood, like definitely. But so I get in front of the class and I say a bit of the speech before he snuffs Desdemona.
Mm-hmm. Whoa.
And Miguel was in a state of shock because he couldn't believe that I knew it. And I think he was trying to pull a fast one off. He said, like, brush up on your Shakespeare. You're teaching my class tomorrow. And so I laid it out, right? And because I just knew it. And I was nervous, anxious, constipated, like at the top of Mikey's poem. But I nailed it. And a lot of it had to do with the simple fact is that because I was studying Kind of Blue, Miles Davis, right? Not studying, but I just listened to it. I've been listening to that since I was probably 5. It's been playing in my house, right? So I know that. Like I know if the police ask me what my name is, I don't know my name as well as I know Miles' trumpet solos on So What. But anyway, so I'm listening to So What, and I'm learning to put space in between the words. Right? That's not an intellectual exercise or nothing like that. Just from listening to da 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 da, ba ba da ba da da, ba ba da ba ba. So I'm listening to that, and then I'm doing this monologue the same way. Now I didn't know at the time that the first 29 words in the beginning of that soliloquy before he snuffs Desdemona, the first 29 words are monosyllables.
Yeah,
There's
a lot of those.
29 in a row.
Wow.
And he doesn't break it up until he gets to whiter than snow or smooth as monumental alabaster. Yet she must die. And so I'm killing it like that because of Miles, not because of my brilliance, because of Miles Davis' So What. And I kill it. And then the rest of the students, and even Miguel was like, what the fuck? Like, what's up? He was shocked. And then I explained to him that I knew the monologue because my grandmother made me kind of not memorize it, but I just knew it. She made me read that nonsense. It's not nonsense. I shouldn't say that. All right. It's only nonsense when people today tell me how relevant it is today. And I go like, okay, it would be more relevant today if we all were forced to write with a pigeon feather, dipping it in a quill and dipping into a ball of ink and then writing, right? Like I tell students sometimes, young kids, that they should think that their writing was a quill and ink. And how many words do they think they could get on a piece of paper when ink was dry?
But when you talk about rhythm with Shakespeare, I mean, it's
it's
there.
Everything. It's there.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Like Macbeth. I've read a lot of Macbeth, and
Oh my God,
when Macbeth goes to the witches again, he says, "How now, you blackened midnight hags, you know? I
Yes.
mean, like, how now, you blackened midnight hags?
And
You know, I mean, there's
it's
just
written,
yeah,
it's written to be
yeah,
played. It's
played,
written.
yeah,
Do
to
wrote
be
this to be
spoken, to
played.
be,
And
yeah,
how many of us, quote unquote, poets, whatever, write for it to be played?
played, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I tell some of
yeah,
these people, I tell some young adults that I work with
yeah,
that they should take something that they love, a rap song,
yeah,
music lyrics, uh, a scene from a movie, just something that they love,
yeah,
and to write it down with ink and a piece of paper,
right,
but write it just in terms of every 4 or 8 or 2 or whatever words, and then stop. Like you ran out of ink.
yeah,
I tell them, write it like you ran. So write 4 words, stop. 4 more, stop. 4 more, stop. All right. And this is
yeah,
just in a creative, free flowing manner. Then if I tell them if they're writing like a Beatles lyric,
Mhm.
yeah,
that's not how Paul McCartney or John Lennon probably wrote it. You write it that way. And here, write 5 words, stop. 5 more words, stop. And then all of a sudden it kind of opens up their ability to get
yeah,
out of their own heads.
yeah,
And they start thinking music as
yeah,
opposed to intellectualism. They start
yeah,
thinking musicality. Then the imagery starts coming, all
yeah,
right? And the rhythm starts to really sustain
right,
itself, you know.
yeah.
Who
I
else? Who
mean,
else? Somebody jump in. Oh, keep going, Karen.
oh, I was just going to say there are a lot of lists in Shakespeare that are almost like poems, you know, like when he's
LIST list.
yeah, L-I-S,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
L-I-S-T-S, you know, when he's talking about someone and he insults them, he'll have like 25 different ways that he could describe this scumbaggy person, you know, but it's like it's almost a poem unto itself.
Oh,
So
you're right here.
yeah,
Villain, be sure thou prove my love a whore, be short of it. Give me the ocular proof, for by the works of thine eternal soul thou hast been better been born a dog than answer my wicked wrath. Make me to see it, or at least so prove it, that the probation bears no hinge, no loop to hang a doubt on, or woe upon thy life. If thou dost slander her and torch, I get you. I totally get it.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
totally get it. And I'm really big, and you know me well enough.
yeah.
I'm really big on shot list. I'm
Yeah,
big
I
on shot
know.
list. That
But
is my thing.
Shakespeare, I mean, he's amazing. I mean, I've, you know, I made a project actually. I don't know if I sent you, I wrote a little article about it, but I made a project out of reading all of Shakespeare for a year. And I've continued. Like I read every day for an hour because I just felt like, you know, even though it's archaic and it's, you know, it's his writing is so alive. There's so much. I mean, the way he puts together lists, the way he uses hyphenated words, the way he makes up words, and the way he plays with words. It's just amazing. He is not afraid to play with words and pile it on if he wants you, you know. He can show, but he also tells. Like that's how he uses lists.
Yeah.
Not just to show, but to tell. You know,
Let me ask anyone who's listening. Um, how many of you can write stream of consciousness for 5 minutes and not pull yourself out of the flow of it? Can any of you do it 5? Can any of you do it 10? Can any of you do it 2? All right. Kind of give me an idea of what is your best time or length of time for writing stream of consciousness? And is that something that most of you do, or does anyone do it? Do you think Shakespeare did it? Do you think Miguel Pinero did it? Do you think Alice Walker did it? Does it? You know, like, what is your idea about stream of consciousness, and how does that help to build your poetry, and then take that poetry you've written in stream of consciousness and turn it into theater?
turn it into
That's
something.
my process. That is my process. I write stream of consciousness for, I can probably go for 4 or 5 minutes at least, but that's how I start. I can't just start writing a poem, you know what I mean? I just start writing shit because one thing, like a phrase or a color or an image or something will inspire me.
and then I start writing stuff and I just go
Yeah.
with that. And then from that, I pull out something else. And that is my process, a stream of consciousness. So yeah.
All the time.
I
So it's
agree.
like
All
no
the
doubt about it. Just all the time. Yeah.
That's my process.
Oh,
And I have a 15-year-old granddaughter who is an amazing little poet. And I encourage her to do that just because you can.
have I met her?
You've seen her.
I thought I did. Yep.
Mhm.
Yes, you have. You've
I
seen
thought I
her at
did.
Spacebar and all
Uh-huh.
over. And she's
I
going to be,
remember.
yeah. And it takes the pressure off myself. If I tell myself, you don't have to write a poem right now. Just
Mhm.
stream of consciousness. Just start writing shit down. Just whatever's in your head, get it on paper, get it out there. And I will tell my granddaughter the same thing because she'll, want to write, but she doesn't know what to write. And just write. Just start your stream of consciousness, just whatever's in your head, get it on paper and pull whatever is in there out, whatever hits you, whatever, you know what I mean? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I do. Yeah.
Mhm.
So how does, okay, this will follow up. How do you build your vocabulary? Because it's almost impossible to do the stream of consciousness thing without a big unless you have a large vocabulary. How do you
That is
guys
true.
build?
That is
How
true.
do you build your vocabulary?
I look up synonyms. I read okay, this is what I like to do. I like to read astronomy magazines
Oh,
because
really?
there are amazing words and language in those magazines.
Mm.
So that's what I do. I kind of
Yeah.
read that type of thing, and I pull out words and language from other sources because my head, I feel really, stunted language wise. I wish I knew more.
How many of you strive to use multi-syllable words? Or is that a conscious decision? Do you look for three, four? Do you look for 5-syllable words, 6-syllable words, 7-syllable? Because once you start, as the number rises, they start running out. But
Yeah.
how many of you consciously attempt to? And I do it all the time because they're more musical
Mhm.
for me. All right, I can't write like that monosyllable craziness that Shakespeare does. All right, even though most MCs that I love, they rhyme in monosyllables, most of them. All right, and it isn't until somebody like Most Def comes along, or
Mhm.
like he kind of like shook me out of my. I'm like, whoa, Most is using 4-syllable, 5-syllable words,
Yeah,
and then
wow.
Black Thought comes along and he's doing it. But for the most part, when I fell in love with hip hop back in the day, the golden years, most people were like, boom, pull up to your spot on low, shine brighter than all the cats they got on glow. Stay in the cut like they not
Mhm.
gonna know, cause if I gotta make a move, yo, they not gonna know. So most of them are boom, boom, boom. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
more
like
musical.
iambic pentameter almost. Yeah.
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 Which is what, Karen?
What?
Explain that to us.
Well, which is like, how now, you black and secret midnight hag. It's just a rhythm. That's
And
like, if you
I
count it,
got
it's 10 syllables.
in sooth, I know not why I am so sad. The intro to Merchant of Venice.
Right. Same
Or
thing. So
Othello.
there's something, yeah.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
virtue thou delighted, beauty
Mhm.
lack, your son-in-law is far more fair than black. All right. I'm with that. And
Yeah.
so I am so into not only my own writing, but I love to hear poetry that makes me remember it. And you
Right.
can remember when you
Right.
read it on the page, but when you're reading, you can always
Yeah.
rewind. You can always go back,
Yeah.
rewind.
Yeah.
When you hear it in a live setting, and so it's almost some people, and they're not hooks, they are hooks, but they're not really thought of as hooks. But some people
Yeah.
put the musicality of their poetry in such a way, and they place it in such a way that,
Yeah.
like Amiri Baraka is brilliant at that. Amiri Baraka was brilliant at saying things that could make you, that you would not forget because they were profound, but they also were minimalist, and
Yeah.
they were profound, minimalist, and they had that music to it. Like the stuff that he had, the music was like unbelievable. And so and they were short.
Yeah.
Like he invented the low coup. All right.
The low coup.
He invented low coup. And
Mhm.
he said the reason he invented it is so because black people don't have time to count syllables because they got things to do. All right. That's how the first time I heard him read some low, that's how he prefaced it. He
Uh-huh.
said, when I was a little boy, I was a strange little boy because I used to read Japanese and Chinese poetry. And I came across this form called haiku.
Coup,
And
right.
I decided as I got older, I was going to invent my own form, and I called it loku
Coup.
because black people do not have time to count syllables.
Uh,
And then he would go, here's one of his loku. Um, class gas, for those who knows. Since the rich eat more than anybody else, it is reasonable to assume they are more full of shit. And that was it. That was it. Boom, done. And if you hear it, right, you ain't got to hear it but one time. It's like you ain't gonna. Even if you got to paraphrase, you are not going to forget the image. You're not going to
right.
forget how profound it was, but also because of the minimalism, which is
Mhm.
why I love haiku. And I
Yeah.
always work anything I do with kids, I attack them with that and couplets,
Yeah.
and haiku, because the shortness, the efficiency of it, they can turn into music, and they can learn to say these beautiful things,
That's
all
right.
right, in very short, brief ways, and that becomes theater.
Yeah.
It's totally
And
theater.
all you need is one image. You don't even need more. You just one,
Eloquence and brevity, for sure. Someone just hit
Mhm.
that hit. Those are my brevity. I love that. I
Mhm.
can't even decide when I'm talking to people, do I want to use efficiency or brevity? But do those
Mhm.
words mean the same thing?
Mhm.
As a group, all right, somebody, do
Mhm.
those two words mean the same thing? If I say brevity or if I say efficiency, if I use one in a couplet or one, and they both could rhyme, so they could be in the end rhyme of a
Yeah.
couplet, brevity, efficiency. But are they the same thing?
I would think so. I would say so.
Anybody
Well,
else? Are those two words the same thing?
I mean, if we're counting syllables,
Hmm.
one of them's 4 and one of them's 3.
There you go. So
So
musicality.
yeah,
So Dimitri, right
Yeah.
away is jumping on the musicality and the structure of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
Dimitri, if you were going to make a couplet and brevity was going to be on the end of the line, one line, and efficiency on the other, how would you make it fit?
so
Say we're going to do
brevity.
iambic. We're going to do
Well,
iambic. Da da da
Oh
da
yeah.
da 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 da. How you going to make them fit?
So brevity and efficiency is the other one.
Now, I don't mean you don't have to
So
freestyle and just come up
yeah.
with a couplet right now, but I'm asking you, is there a technique
oh
that you could use? Is there a technique you could use? All right. That
yeah,
I got here. How often have you written something you may have
I
started
got
to
it.
write it and you wanted it to be in a certain beat, that certain beats or syllables, and then
Yeah,
you write it
I
and it's
mean,
dope, and then you go like, wait a minute, but that doesn't fit. What do you do with your vocal
right.
skills to
Mm.
make it fit? Like stretching,
Ah, okay.
bending.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing I wanted to say was using alliteration. So brevity really hanging on the B's, because the thing is with the B's, it does something to your mouth that slows you down, So it's like the boy bought the basketball, brevity moving into the idea of eloquence. So going to that second line, like in idea, eloquence, you're getting those E sounds, You have the B's with all that stuff in the brevity for the first. So I think slowing it down with alliteration, because then you're concentrating on kind of like those pressure points of those letter sounds, like the vowel and the consonant sounds. So that's what I would do.
I hope y'all are listening because he said pressure points. When I'm
Mm.
talking to kids and working with young kids, you know what I tell them to do? Same thing, but I tell them to kill the consonants. They kill the consonants. They go like, what are you talking about? All right. Well, now a B is a soft sounding consonant as opposed to a K. But when I tell them to kill them, smash them, destroy them, put it like they're underneath your feet and just crush it like it's a roach or something, been bugging you in the house all day. All right. And the kids get it, and it starts to help them with their articulation. Something as
Mhm.
simple as kill the consonant. And that does seem, I
Yeah.
guess it could have negative connotations attached to it, but the kids love it. And then
Hmm.
you ask them how many consonants are in the alphabet, right? And so I could be in the third grade, sixth grade. I could be in a freshman honors English class in the wrong neighborhood, and they not It's not there. The same with the vowel sound. And so, Dimitri, when I was asking you, what I was not hoping, but how do you use the vowel sounds, the upper vowel sounds, to stretch, bend, mold, and make the language plastic and elastic? Is that something you consciously do as a performer, as someone who's standing in front of people saying your stuff aloud? Is this something you work on or think about, or it just happens?
Oh
Like you
yeah,
could
no,
take
I
an
mean,
A sound and just go like, hey, or
I
oh.
I definitely think about how those things are going to sound, especially when you're in front of an audience, because if you have a lot of words, the audience might miss some of it. So you're gonna have to slow down in order for them to keep up and kind of like
Yeah.
soak in all that imagery, you know? Like the example I gave, I kind of blew through it really fast.
Hit
So
it again.
someone,
Say it
uh,
again.
oh crap, man, I don't even know. Let me see. I think it was like the boy bought the boy brought down the basketball of brevity, erroneous in the eloquence of the idle. I don't even know what the last word was anymore. I knew it had those e sounds though, but you know, just the idea of slowing it down. Like the boy brought down the basketball of brevity. You know, just literally doing what you said. Just every two words, kind of taking that breath, so someone could actually keep up with you. You're kind of taking them along with you. You're taking them by the hand along with you to get through the piece. To really just kind of lay out the landscape for them. You know.
And are you conscious of like killing consonants at the end of a word that will physically make you stop so you can take a breath, you can leave a space in between whatever's coming next? That a conscious
Oh yeah,
decision that you make? Like just a simple
yeah,
word like that,
yeah,
THAT. Like a lot of
yeah.
people
That.
won't, yeah, people won't kill the T,
Yeah,
right?
that.
Because they don't like the way it sounds or feels.
Mm,
But if all of us do it physically, it could stop you and allow you to inhale or exhale. So I find
mhm.
myself as I get older, because as I get older, my circulation's not as good, my heart's not
Right.
pumping as well as it was 20 years ago. So if I wrote a poem 10 years ago and it's dense and I read it now, I gotta watch my breathing techniques because I'm
Mm.
older. Not like I'm out of shape or anything. I got heart
Mhm.
problems, but I gotta watch myself now. And it's amazing. Like the physical,
Mm,
I, whatever my physical fitness 10 years ago is not as good as it is now. Not that I'm not trying to work on it,
Mhm.
but it changes the way I say it. So now it's changing the way I write it because I know if I write it like it was then, I'll get up there and I won't be able to physically get it out. So just the
right.
physical aspect of my life is forcing me to write different,
Wow.
Mm,
and I don't
Mhm.
know who else is experiencing that. All right. But I would really like to know because it changes the words I use.
Mm.
As I get
mm,
older, my diction is not as sharp. My phonetics are not as sharp. So words that fit in my mouth 10 years ago, I could have a little bit more difficulty saying them now. So I may have to slow
mm,
down, or there's devices I may have to use to do that. And that's when poetry starts to become theater. But I didn't
Mm.
find this out until I got older. Like, oh, you
mm,
can't really rip it like that no more. Oh, what are you gonna do? And so you come to grips with the fact, like, I'm getting older. I'm not as flexible. All right. I'm not whatever. You got to start changing to adjust to where you're at. But then that becomes prescribed, and prescribed is more theatrical
Yeah.
than poetry, which is how I really make these connections. So it's
mm.
age, maturity, wisdom, because we all know what it is to be young and think we just like, we just in it, right? Not even thinking about it. Like Dimitri's much, 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 much younger than I am. So I'm sure when he gets up on the stage, the last thing he's thinking about is breathing problems. And I don't have breathing problems, but I'm still in the back of my head. I do. Don't start tripping. Don't think this is 1994.
Oh
Like
man.
things could happen. All right. Was there anybody else experiencing things about their physical condition that does or does not allow them to be as flexible as they used to be? Anybody?
Mm.
Well,
Rachel,
I am older
I wanted
than I
to
used to be, of course. And my physical situation is my stomach and my nerves. I didn't even used to think about it before, but now I do. Just when you were talking about the stomach thing,
Yeah, ain't
yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah.
That's
Mhm.
but,
But that's what
can you?
happens every single freaking time. You know, I need to perform or whatever. I'm always all fucked up in the stomach.
Well,
And
here, I'll give you a perfect example of here. Here's someone we all know in one way, shape, or other. We all know Robert De Niro. Yes? Who sitting here does not know something about Robert De Niro as an actor or a thespian? Or all right? Could everybody agree on we know this guy? People nowadays, oh, I saw the Irishman and blah blah blah, and Robert De Niro sucked. Sucked. He's 68. He's 72. All right. How come we as critics or art lovers or whatever, how come wait a minute, he sucks? Really? And I've heard people say that. Well, I've heard older poets. I remember I read with Allen Ginsberg once, and it could have been 2 weeks before he died. Right? And I remember after I came off the stage, and somebody was like, "Oh wow, I remember I heard him in San Francisco read Howl and blah blah blah." And this sure sound he's old, god damn it. What is wrong? Like, do we even take that into consider? I don't think we take it in consideration when we're listening or ready to critique or be, like just really to love someone doing their thing. But I think if we start with ourselves, it makes us better able to adjust and understand people's brilliance as they get older. Like when's the last time any of us saw a performance, either live on stage or in a movie or something, of a person who's like Maggie Smith, someone like that, or Cicely Tyson, someone like that. And so I was watching, I don't know what, it was just something stupid that I would never watch, but I was with my family. It was the murder thing with Viola Davis. And Cicely Tyson was her mom's, right? I don't really watch this, but I'm with the family back in West Orange, New Jersey. It's a black thing, Sunday dinner, whatever. But they were all getting on Cicely. I'm like, she's 90. She's 90. So you getting on her about like, did it ever dawn on you? She's 90 years old. They got putting the makeup on her. She got to learn the script. She could hardly walk. She probably got arthritis, and that alone makes her kick ass.
Right.
And then my nieces are sitting there texting. Oh, they're all under 30 years old, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, they just because they thought of it that way, they were easier on her. Then they started to pay closer attention. Then they started to see her brilliance. And we all here, who sitting here is not going to be older 2 minutes after they get off this online workshop? It's happening. It's happening. And all of us should be making adjustments with ourselves. Then we become better at criticism and critiquing. And the reason why so much art sucks is because people don't have thick enough skin to take constructive criticism, but also we who are giving it don't understand the best way to do it. And the best way to criticize someone is to be hard on yourself. Understand where you're as a person. Like I know I can't spit fast anymore. And I used to be like crazy doing that. I wrote that way. I wrote it so it would come out like a John Coltrane solo. Like I was so fascinated with that. Like, oh, I want them to stay with me. It was challenging to me. Stay with me, follow me, stay with me. Nowadays it's like I don't do that. All right. And so I'm making adjustments. Who's making adjustments in their performances of people sitting here? And maybe don't have to call a performance. Reading, you could be standing on stage reading out of a book, you could be lecturing, you could be talking to a classroom. Who is making adjustments as they get older with their ability to facilitate information? Because all of us sitting here are teachers. I don't think there's anybody in the face of the earth, any human being is not a teacher. We all can do that. We all have the responsibility to do it. Who's making those adjustments and what are those adjustments? And who could say something to me that would make me better at my adjustments? because I'm making adjustments.
I make adjustments all the time. Adjustments, gotta make adjustments. I make adjustments because I'm old. And I challenge myself to try and memorize my poetry, you know, if I have to perform. But I will practice and practice and practice because I just can't just get up there and just do it. I need to feel a little confident about what I'm going to deliver and what I'm going to say and what I want the audience to hear and react to. So my adjustment is that I'm not that confident as much as I used to be. So I practice and practice and practice, and I'll have all my shit printed out in front of me, and I'll take my, my meds.
If you were going to give me a note or a cue or advice on how I should learn things by heart, all right, what cue would you give me? What cue would you give everyone who's sitting here? How does it become? I don't like the word memorize because that's hard work.
Yeah, it is hard work.
That is hard work. Every time when I was in school, even in elementary school, if the teacher said I had to memorize something, I was like, oh, here we go. If somebody would have said to me, the teacher in second grade would have said, like, we're going to learn the Star Spangled Banner by heart. All right. What does that mean, teacher? Well, first we're going to learn it and find out what we love about it. Then the part that you love will be easy to learn. Then the rest of the stuff that you don't learn, that you want to edit and get rid of, like the bomb here, the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air. Now I knew as a second grader that shit is wrong. I knew that as a second grader. Like the image was here. Wait a minute. We're pledging to this flag and somebody dropping bombs. I said, what's going on here? Something's not right. So as a second grader, I knew something was not right. So whenever it came up, I heard it. If I hear it now, they could be singing it at the baseball park. And when that part comes, I get this image of death and destruction and murder. So when I finally learned it, and I wasn't even forced to have to learn it because my father, like, you don't have to learn that. You just don't say anything. My father didn't believe it. All right. My father, who was a cop, he didn't believe it. So he said, just sit there quietly. You don't have to say it. All right. But even when I hear it today, I get that picture. Boom. So Deb, give me something that would help me learn my stuff as a writer, performer by heart.
I don't know.
No. But by you giving it to me, it will strengthen your ability to do it for yourself. Trust me. And there's something that you do that you could say you do that could help me.
Okay,
and I don't forget shit. I don't forget nothing.
This is
nothing ever.
I read it over and over and over. I read it and then I say it. I read it and I say it. And I read it and I say it. And if it's a piece that I really, really love of my own, it just,
it's easier.
It's easier. And it can change. It's like when you retell a story, sometimes things kind of change as you.
And what word is that, Dimitri? What word is she fishing for? When you're telling a story, you know it by heart, and all of a sudden it starts to shift and go in a different place, or words are replaced.
Yeah.
Like today, this audience,
like,
this area of the country, this word will fit better than that word today. That's improvisation, everyone. And who has the ability? All of us do. All right. But you got to stay open to the moment.
Right.
Because without good technical skills, you cannot improvise. But without improvisation here, the technological advances in digital communication are forcing all human beings to have better memories. Because if you let this machine, if you let these brain dead rotation devices chip away at your memory, you're going to have Alzheimer's and dementia because of these machines. Don't let these machines get your brain, your cerebral cortex lazy, right?
Right.
Dimitri, how do you improvise, man?
By accident. You've heard some of my work. I'm fast, so if I go a little too far too quickly, and I say I sub a word, and I gotta say, I can't let everyone know I just subbed out this word, so I'm just gonna follow it. So sometimes I end up getting like an extra couple of lines out of a poem just because I gotta follow my mistake until I can remember to come back to where I need to go. But it's probably not a mistake because it's well, it's not a mistake. It's a part of the performance. It's a part of the performance aspect. Taking someone on a trip with you. Um, or sometimes, you just might think of a line that sounds more dope than the line you would have had otherwise. And you
And
wouldn't have
hit it
had
and
that.
just hit it
Yeah.
right
And you
there.
wouldn't have had that unless if you had the energy from the audience, like picking up that vibe, that vibrational energy from that space. And then that's how different lines come up. That's how pieces of different poems have come up for me.
That's John Coltrane. That's Miles Davis. That's Albert Adler. That's Sarah Vaughan. How many of
Yeah.
you have muffed a word or something, right? And you didn't tell anybody in the audience? That's a device. Everyone, that's a device. I've seen great actors do it on the stage. All right. That's a device. You never let anyone know that you got lost for a second. Never. Play it off. Because if they're not your best friend or your wife, your husband or something, and they didn't watch you write the script and they helped or the poem, then nobody knows.
They'll never know.
No
They're
one
never gonna
knows. So
know.
Dimitri just told us that if you make a mistake, it's a happy mistake.
Yeah.
All right. You
Happy mistake.
cannot have negative connotations attached to anything that happens when you're in live performance. All right. And there's so many things that you could do. All right. You get lost. Here, one of the easiest techniques. If you get lost, go back, rewind, just rewind and repeat where you were. Just rewind and repeat where you were. Go back to where you were. And so for most people in the audience, nowadays we are so sophisticated at having stories told to us that a lot of us don't give the fans or the audience the respect that they deserve. People can have stories told them non-linear, linear, I mean, all different ways, abstractions, and we get it. All right. We're getting better at that. So don't ever tell anybody that you screwed up. Rewind, go back. Repetition, recurring theme. Think of those are techniques. Repetition or recurring themes can get you out of hot water. Plus, they're really beautiful devices. If I get lost, I'll rewind and I'll say a line 3, 4 times and I'll whisper at the top of my lungs. I'll raise the volume and almost shout it at the top. And the shout is for me like, okay, you're back in the groove. All right. You're back in the groove. Here, Danny Hawk. Here, this is the beginning of Danny Hawk's message to the blunt man. Technique. Right. He had to write this down, but think about the technique. Recurring theme or repetition. 40s, blunts, hoes, clocks, and texts. You got your X cap, but I got you powerless. Volume. 40s, blunts, hoes, Glocks, and texts. You got your X cap, but I got you powerless. Volume. 40s, blunts, hoes, Glock. That's a technique. That's a technical device you can use in performance when you're screwing up. And you whisper at the top of your lungs, and people start leaning forward in their seats. And you see you have control of them in that moment, and it starts to build confidence. Deborah just said she's not really confident all the time. You can use technical things to give yourself a boost of confidence in the moment. And one of the main things you can whisper at the top of your lungs. Purposely make people lean into what you're saying. Then give them another piece of it. Or don't say the whole line. Say 3, 4 words, stop. Get a little Miles Davis silence just sitting there for a moment. All right. And reflect. Like how many of you have the wherewithal to be on stage in performance and you could stop and think before you speak? Who has it like that? But great thespians do that. Great act. What happens if Lawrence Fishburne is doing Fences, right? He's on Broadway doing Fences, and somebody starts coughing, having an asthma attack, a bad one. What's Lawrence gonna do? What's he gonna do? And here, fast forward. Actors on stage, telephones ringing, somebody's phone goes off, their cell goes off. How often have any of you been able to use that in that moment? I've seen people do it. I've seen people like start having a conversation with the phone, in the middle of a performance. That stand-up comedy, that's one thing, but somebody's doing King Lear, or somebody's doing Hamlet, and they go, now like I do with Pat. Now he is a praying, and now a ring, ring, ring. What do you do? Do you go back? I mean, what do you do? So you have to be aware of your surroundings, but you got to also do anything you can to build confidence in the moment. Dimitri, you're on stage a lot. I don't know most of the other people in the room how much they're on stage. You're on stage a lot. What happens when something goes wrong that's out of your control? That's got nothing to do with you. What do you think? Do you think? Does your brain work that fast? All right. What do you do?
Because I'm Puerto Rican, it does kind of work that fast. So
that's a good answer.
Like the phone ringing, for instance, right? Like the next couple of words, I'm going to throw in call or ringing in there, even if it's like kind of like a Dickinsonian use of a verb or something, kind of like there was a reflection on the car ringing instead of a reflection on the car glaring, right? You just kind of use the area and space around you. Or you just stop and say hello, and then that'll be a chuckle from the audience. It gives you a second to kind of like get back into your poem, and then you get to continue,
I've seen actors, I've seen it happen. And I guess you got to go to these things a lot to have experience. Like the more you go, the more you're going to understand what the hell. But I've seen a specific actor, phone rang, he paused, he just froze. All right. The minute it stopped, it was 3 rings. The minute it stopped, he went to his pocket, pulled out a fake phone, and called his wife. He called in the middle of the play. He called without a phone, just hand like this. He said, "Hey, hon, yeah. Somebody's phone just rang. I figured I have a moment. I want to call you and tell you I love you." Then he went boom, back in his pocket and back into the play. And I was like, oh, smack. Could I have that kind of confidence or wherewithal to pull that off? But seeing it happen in real time, I'm like, oh, I could do that. I could pull that off. All right. So that's the template. I can pull that off. And if we don't see it, we don't hear it, we don't use it, or we don't show it, all right, because confidence is everything when you're on stage. Everything. You have to believe. All right. And we're human beings. We don't believe. All right. The nature of our species is we don't believe. All right. Most of us do not believe. But confidence, and it's so fleeting. 1 minute you could have it. It could all happen in one poem or one monologue, one soliloquy. You're killing it. It's like most poets / spoken word artists, performance artists, I don't know many of them that understand how not to grind through a gear change. Does anyone know what that is, gear changes? Like in terms of speaking, soliloquies, monologue, poetry? Does anyone know what a gear change is? Okay, we'll go back to Othello getting ready to snuff out Desdemona. All right. Most people think he's in a catatonic state, talking, to whoever he's talking to. But his brain's here, it's over there, it's over there. So people think he's schizophrenic or something. But our brains work like that. Right now, I'm talking. If there's 12 of you here, how many people are here? I'm talking right now, and you may be listening to what I'm saying, but don't tell me there's not 7 other things going on in your head. That's how we're built. I mean, we're built that way. Not a problem. All right. I'm talking to you right now, and I'm thinking about my sister because I saw her name and she wants to be admitted into this session. And so I'm talking to you about Othello killing Desdemona in the monologue and how this relates to poetry theater. But I'm thinking about my sister, my baby sister, who I love and adore, right? And how she's in Tampa and the rains are coming. I hope she's not, her house is not, met. I'm thinking this while I'm trying to facilitate information. But
I'm good.
oh, you good. Love you. See, there she
Love
is.
you.
Right? That's Phyllis, everybody. But that's how our brains work if we allow them to do it. All right. But we don't believe. Most of us don't believe. And I'm telling you, the older you get, the less you believe, the closer you're going to get to Alzheimer's and dementia. And I am not trying to be funny. Use it or lose it. And this thing right here, this is the enemy right here.
Mm.
This is the enemy. All right. And we need them. They're wonderful. Whoa. How many things, Dimitri, how many books would you have to carry around with you if there was no digital?
Too many.
In their backpack, right?
Yeah.
How many albums, if you was a DJ, how many albums you got to carry around in a rack, in a box,
Milk
in a
crates.
crate to go do your thing? Look at this now. You could have 500, you could have 5,000 albums in your brain dead rotation device. So how could that be a negative thing? Right? But we're losing somewhere.
Yeah.
And anyone who's sitting in this session right now who writes and performs, all right, you behoove yourself to learn your stuff by heart. Don't be stuck to the page.
Right.
Because the minute you get stuck to the page, it actually interferes with your writing process. Because if you know you can do it, I can go up there and say this, it frees you up to write doper shit. Because the confidence comes along with that. And like Deborah was saying, how she learns it. Deborah, do you listen to music while you're trying to learn your stuff by heart?
Sometimes, but no, because then I get lost in the music.
Oh, well, for me,
Yeah.
I don't write shit if there's not music happening. And never. Then I look for music to inspire me and I write to it. I write to it. Here's an exercise for everybody in this room. Find a bass line that you love, a bass line, right? Whatever it is. Scat it out, hum it out, whistle it out. Once you get the bass line down cold, put a word in where every note is. Put a word where every note sits. Now, right now, Deborah, you got a bass line that you know just like that you love? Hey, all of us know this, or we should all know this. Boom, 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 boom. So that's the bass line to Love Supreme. Boom, 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 boom. A love supreme. So if you take those 4 notes and put your own, instead of a love supreme, can you fill it in with something else? Boom, 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 boom. That's an exercise.
Yeah.
That's a real writing exercise because you've already been afforded the melody and the musicality of the poetry. It's given to you. It's there for you. Boom, 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 boom. And how many bass lines are there in the world? How many bass lines do each one of us know that we love? That the minute we hear it, we go, oh. Like one of my favorite bass lines is there's a song by a group called Samande, and it's called Bra. And the bass line just goes boom, 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 boom. You know how easy it is for me to put the words in there? You are a big pain in my ass. You are. I mean, anything. Let the bass line tell you how you feel. All right, bass line comes on, you know how you feel. You want to dance, you hate it, you feel negative. There are bass lines that can make you cry.
Oh, yeah.
You get the bass line, let it affect you emotionally, then put a word where each note is. Doom, 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 a love supreme. All right. That's an exercise. Plus, the musicality makes you remember. And forget about remembering. You want to write stuff that you never forget. Forget all the memorize and all the learn about. You want to write things that you never forget.
Mm.
And I do not like using words like don't and not with negative connotations, but never forget. Reg, how do you remember all this stuff? Oh, I was watching you read poetry. You read poetry for an hour. You was reading your shit, somebody else's shit, most deaf shit. You ain't miss a beat. How you remember that? I don't. I never forget it because I love it. It's part of my DNA. It's in my bloodstream. All right. Like who wants to learn? Like I said, who wants to learn the Star Spangled Banner? There's no kid in the second grade that wants to learn that. I want to learn. Why? Because if somebody just read it to them, they don't like that. There's no music, there's no poetry in that. But the minute why you think kids like Dr. Zeus? Most of the time, you read kids that are being read, they're having Dr. Zeus read to them. They don't even understand the images and stuff. But the musicality, they love it. Yeah, da 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 da. Yes, I am Sam. I am. They don't know who's Sam. Who the hell is Sam? This is their uncle or something. Yeah, but it's da 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 da. Shakespeare. Da 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 da. If virtue thou delight and beauty lack, your son-in-law is far more fair than black. J. Cole. Pick up a pen, write down a sin, and cleanse. Lay the shit down, play it for friends, make a few M's, then do it again. J. Cole, who would have thought you would have been? Rhyming with ghosts. Google flows forever like a diamond at most. Could never afford this precious jewel. That's exactly why I'm blessing you with clear-cut messages. I'm destined to invest in urban sections where depression rules. I hope to heal the destitute before I leave this vestibule. He said, before I leave this vestibule. I ain't heard nobody say that word since my grandmother did. She's been dead for 30 years. But J. Cole in 2019 writes a rhyme that got vestibule in it.
Vestibule. Wow.
Vestibule. I can't even say this shit. Yeah. It's only fit in my mouth. But my grandmother used to call her porch with the awning and the indoor porch, the vestibule. I'm like, what the hell is that? What? So I know the word.
That's so
Because
awesome.
I come from smart people and stuff. Now here's this guy. Everybody told J. Cole, he's a dope rhymer, blah, blah, blah. I don't know shit about J. Cole. Then J. Cole happened to be asked to be on a track with Guru and Gangstar. I love Guru. I was a friend of Guru. It's a friend of mine. So the minute I heard that, well, let me check out J. Cole because the Premier's putting J. Cole down on a Guru track. He must got something. And so Guru does it. And Guru's dead, but they sample his lyrics and it's dope. It's good to hear Premier. It's good to hear Guru kicking his rhymes. And so I'm waiting for J. Cole now. Can you keep up? Can you keep up? Can you, like, what you gonna do? And dude said, pick up the pen, write down a sin, it cleanse. Lay this shit down, play it for friends, make a few M's. Then J. Cole, who would have thought you would have been rhyming with ghosts? Guru flows forever like a diamond at most, could never afford that precious jewel. That's exactly why I'm blessing you with clear-cut messages. I'm destined to invest in urban sections where depression rules. I hope to heal the destitute before I leave this vestibule. Now I'm a J. Cole. Now at least now I gotta go and get the next J. Cole record to see if he can keep up with that. All right. But he said vestibule. And he rhymed it. And what was the rhyming word before it? Anybody remember?
Destitute.
I hope to heal the destitute. All right. Before I leave this vestibule. So that's an internal rhyme going on. So that's J. Cole. All right. Like I don't trust me. If he wasn't doing this with Guru, I'm a fan of Guru, I'm a fan of Gangstar, I'm a fan of Premier. If he wasn't hooked up with him, I would have never learned that.
Wow. Yeah.
And now
and you know what? It takes a lot of chutzpah to use a word like vestibule. You know, you have to really be
in 2019, and you know who his audience is. Yeah. And so now I could go into Weequahic High School in North New Jersey. Or I could go I could go anywhere in the country and start off a poetry workshop with kids who don't give a shit about poetry. They don't want to hear shit. And I could be kicking it along, and they may not even be following me. Pick up a pen, write down a sentence, it cleanse. Lay the shit down, play it for friends, make a few M's, then I say J. Cole, who would have thought you would have been? Then all of a sudden they're all like, oh, J. Cole, who would have thought you would have been rhyming with Ghost? Then all of a sudden they're all like, oh. Then the kids are saying this while I'm kicking it. They go like, yo, dude got bars. Yo, check out dude got bars. Who is he, man? You know. But that's what you got to do. Confidence. Confidence is based on solid technical skills. You got to have solid technique. And freestyling or improvisation, you don't have good technical skills, you can't do it. How, Demetri, you still there? How do you study freestyling? And not you per se, but you teach enough, you're around enough young adults.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to young adults about strengthening their freestyling skills?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, first you got to love it. You got to love what you do, as we've been saying in this workshop. Secondly, you said studying, but studying doesn't necessarily need to be studying. You just got to like what you do. So listening to music, listening to rhymes, emulating those rhymes. And then the last one, I got to say it, you got to read. You're not going to know these words unless you read, and if you're not reading, you're not writing. So.
It's like kryptonite. It's like kryptonite to kids. Read, right? But that's because they don't. But that's because they're not given the things to read in the public education, especially in the public education system in New Jersey, New York, where I come from, where you come from. They're not giving, and it's slowly creeping in. It's getting a little bit better. But what English teacher would be using that pass by J. Cole's to get her students' attention? It would be difficult for her to learn it. She don't even got time to learn it. She's in the midst, she's surviving. My sister's a great teacher, at a high school in Tampa. But Phyllis is a game, so that means she's a brilliant artist, and we all about music and theater and all this other stuff because we was raised like that. So Phyllis got techniques that she could use, that she could do off the top of her head because she got that kind of confidence in her skill set because it's through osmosis. All right. My sister's probably seen 50 Broadway musicals from the time she was a little girl. All right. That all comes into play later on. You don't know what's happening when your parents or your guardians are taking you to these experiences, and you don't know, but it's in your DNA. Our mother went to Juilliard for voice and piano, and she gave it up to get married and have 10 kids. All right. But every time I step to the stage, I know I need to just stay open and let Beverly, which is our mother, let her do her thing. I need to stay open and go. Let her do her thing. And if you don't believe that, you can't be an artist. If you don't believe your job as an artist is to stay open to let that come through you. All right. You let ego get in the way, you're going to be booty. There's evidence all over the world. Well, how come they made that dope record, then the next one was booty? Because they believed the hype after the first one. How many people's second thing fell flat on its face? Or got all the hype and it just like fell apart? You got to stay open to whatever it is that's going to come through and kick ass. And so here, I got to go actually soon. I'm almost over. I'll leave you with this. To be a brilliant artist, poet, performer, theater actor, director, choreographer, lighting design, you need to get out of your own way. And I'll do that in monosyllables. You need to, single syllable words, you need to get out of your own way. Da 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 da. 9 beats. If you don't leave with anything else, all right, when I sign off, when we all sign off, remember that. You want to be a great artist? Take the help. Take the help. Just because you sitting in a room sequestered, you writing your poems, and it's almost like you in solitary confinement and shit and whatever, let it happen. Amiri Baraka says, every once in a while, if you stay true to the form, every once in a while, a poem will come and slap you upside your head and make you write it. But that will never happen if you don't stay open to the moment and you are not always working at it anyway. Would you get in the lift with a guy? If you get in the lift and you go into the airport and you say to the guy, "Hey, how you doing, bro? How long you been riding Lyft?" He said, "It's my first night. Let me the fuck out. Let me out." All right. No. Your first night? You're my first customer ever. Really? You ain't no taxi cab driver. You ain't no Lyft driver. Let me out. It's not safe. You can't call yourself a Lyft driver and I'm your first customer ever? I don't think so. All right. How you gonna call yourself a poet? Right? And you ain't written a poem in 6 weeks. It ain't gotta be good, bad, or indifferent. You gotta write it. How you gonna be an actor if you ain't rehearsing monologue? How many great actors haven't worked because of the pandemic? What you think they doing? What you think Denzel Washington's doing right now? Playing golf? What do you think Denzel Washington is? You don't think he's yearning and itching to do? Because that's his thing. That's his life. His wife and his kids are his life, but that's his life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What do you do in these kind of times? Sit online, try that. And here, this is hard. Being online and like Dimitri said earlier, it's like until you realize if you're doing online anything, until you realize that you are an individual in each one of these boxes, not a group of people, it's individually being in each one. So you have the ability to affect masses of people if you know how to jump through the screen. Like the Amityville horror girl. You know when she jumped in the screen or they pulled her in, that's what you got to do with this. Which is why I was talking about double dutch earlier. We will all be better off for this if we learn our unique rhythms. And then when it's time to do these things, you understand the weakness or strength of a Wi-Fi situation. You understand buffering and how that happens. All right. Your technical stuff got to be on point because you can't jump in and out of the screen like it's double dutch if your shit ain't working right. If your mic's kind of going off, you're like, sign off. Just sign, get out. That's what I do. I cut us to see y'all because I can't.
Word.
You know what I'm saying? I can't do it. All right. It was why so many people got a hard time. But this is it. Suppose the pandemic don't never leave.
No.
Suppose COVID-19 is forever. This could be it. This could be. So if you ain't gonna be dope, if you don't learn how to use this, you're gonna be here, an old term from the streets of Jersey City. You don't know how to use this right, you're gonna be assed out.
Yeah, you are so right.
You're gonna be and I'm telling you, we all have the ability to be great at this. Like I said earlier, we could all be great readers. We could be great at this. We do it all the time anyway.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, just because we're forced to do it, now all of a sudden I'm nervous about this. Oh, my shit ain't working right. Blah, blah, blah. No, you do this all the time anyway. You just do it on a smaller brain dead rotation device. That's all. Like I can't wait until I can do this on a big screen. Like I'm getting ready to move into an office with a big ass screen, a room I could dance around and carrying on. And ain't no neighbors that's in the office. So ain't no neighbors I'm gonna bother. And I can't wait to do that. Then I could jump in, jump out. It'd be nice if you talk and all of a sudden you disappear from the screen. Where'd he go? You come, hey, people gonna learn how to use this. All right, listen. I hope all your family and yourselves are happy and healthy. Phyllis, I love you. Glad you're
Love
here.
you.
Glad you on the screen. That's my sister, everyone. My younger sister, Phyllis.
Word.
Ooh, let me tell you a story about her before we go. I got to give a shout out. No. My sister, Phyllis, is so dope.
How dope is she?
How dope is she?
She graduated, right, from Ramapo College, BS in theater, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, but that wasn't enough for her. And I don't know the whole story, but here, something happened in her life that she felt she had to go to Gallaudet University and learn to get an advanced degree in signing.
Mm.
And she hears
ASL.
perfectly. Yes, she hears perfectly. And now, because of her improvisational skills, thanks to her mother, grandmother, just osmosis DNA, Phyllis teaches sign language, ASL, mixes it with hip hop dancing and teaches it to students who cannot hear
Oh my gosh.
using the thumping vibration of a bass line so they know what's happening rhythmically. That's who
Siobhan's on.
Phyllis.
Siobhan's on too.
My sister Siobhan. Siobhan.
Oh snap.
Oh wait, I'm gonna get off soon because now I'm giving my family the shout out. I should be doing some information facilitation. But my sister Siobhan, she's only a couple of steps away to have been up on that stage the other night with that white suit on as Vice President of the United States. That's who my sister Siobhan is. And y'all think I'm bullshit, but I'm serious. She could just as easily have been, and I'm not saying Kamala, I'm saying Kamala. Because I know how the Arabic language goes. I'm not saying Kamala. What's her name, everyone?
Pamela.
No, Kamala. You go to Egypt or something. Kamala. How beautiful, Kamala.
Kamala.
Right. All right, Siobhan, love you. Phyllis, love you. Love you all. Stay healthy and happy. And I'm gonna go. I hope this was decent. Next week we doing Sekou Sundiata. If y'all know who that is. All right, peace, y'all. Oh, anybody, any comments? Thanks, Dimitri.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See y'all. Peace. Love y'all.
You.
Out.
Bye bye. Thank you.